Welcome to Evo Biz Devo with Isis Latham, your host, your hub for personal and professional growth since 2018. At Evo Biz Devo, we bring together entrepreneurs, business leaders, and change makers to spark ideas, share knowledge, and grow together. Stick with us as we explore fresh ways to expand networks, build resources, and create lasting impact. Let's get started. I'm your host, and it's my pleasure today to introduce you to Louise Edwards. Louise is a professional certified coactive coach, certified Equus coach, certified positive intelligence coach, with additional professional development in mindful self-compassion and interpersonal neurobiology. What's most important to her, though, is that she is the mom of 3 perfectly imperfect kids. Her original focus as a coach was on interpersonal development to combine her passions around animals, helping others, and personal growth. Then the pandemic hit and her youngest child's life went into a tailspin. It became clear to her that everything she thought she knew about being a good mother wasn't working, and that it may have even contributed to creating the crisis in the first place. So with true resilience, Louise took a hard look at parenting, her own included, to create a new definition of good that lets go of perfection patterns and focuses on what truly matters, your deep, authentic connection with your kids. This is why we brought you here today, because this is, right, we've all been a child. We've all experienced that. And so many of us have also experienced parenting. And parenting is probably the hardest job you'll ever do, right?
Yeah.
So what inspired you to focus on resilience coaching for parents and their children? I mean, lots of people suffer challenging experiences with their own family, but they don't choose to go out and do what you've done. So what was it that really connected the dots for you and said, it's not just about healing my family, but I want to heal and help heal others?
Well, initially, it wasn't like that. Initially, I was in, survival mode, and dealing with a profound sense of loneliness and shame, and loss, all the whilst interweaving in coach training. And I felt it viscerally that there was something missing. When you research coaching, it's like leadership and this, that, and the other, and career coaching, and and then when you're a parent, you have this sort of whole encompassing life, that's no one's telling you what to do. And it was finding myself lost in that sort of middle space and feeling terribly, terribly alone that started me connecting those dots for myself. I was basically having to show up for myself in a way that I never had done before, and no one else seemed to be equipped to do it. And it built into almost like the snowball rolling down the hill. It was like I have to do this.
Yeah.
And the minute I started being open about my own struggles, I started hearing from friends and people who look perfect on the outside of very similar struggles.
Yeah.
And so it seemed like there was a space that someone needed to step into.
There's a lot of societal myths about being a good parent, and I think you're touching on that right now. Can you explain some of the ones that you found through the process? Because I think we know it's easy to say that's the way it is, right? That there's all these myths out there. What are some of the ones that you started to name, though, and recognize were really detrimental in your situation, but also as you're talking to other parents?
It was that linkage between success and happiness.
Mm.
That was my, kind of smack between the eyeballs moment. I had assumed that if I did everything right, that my kids would be successful. And if they were successful, they would be happy.
Mhm.
And so when my daughter went into a tailspin, I remember driving in the car and she'd said to me, I think I might need to see a therapist. And I started going through a checklist in my head. Gets good grades, got lots of friends, well behaved, engaging, hangs out with the family, plays lacrosse, wants tennis lessons. There can't be anything wrong here.
Yeah.
And it was only looking back and feeling that disbelief in my own body that I was very attached to an outside definition of what happiness should be and should look like, and realizing that I was actually equating it with some sort of external um, signs of success.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't working. It just didn't add up. And
Yeah.
it took a long, hard look at myself to sort of notice it. It didn't happen overnight. It happened over probably a year that I kind of looked into that void and said, there is an enormous gap here between what I thought I was supposed to do and what I was actually doing and the impact it was having on my kids. It was profoundly painful. And I felt very, very alone, and I felt a lot of shame.
You mentioned a couple of things, feeling, right? How did you get out of your head? Because you talked first about kind of rolling through the replay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that was all in your mind, in your head, and you're
Mm-hmm.
justifying as you're going through that. And I think we
Yeah.
can all relate to that in relationships in general. And then you'd mentioned you started to feel.
Mm-hmm.
What was can you describe what occurred between those two events? And I know it didn't happen instantly, but when did you start to
Mm-hmm.
become aware that you were feeling instead of thinking it through?
Um, and that's actually a really hard question. And I don't know that I can, it was a process. It was a process of going through coach training simultaneously. And perhaps this is how it happened, that I was training as a coach and facing a big challenge.
Mm.
And then, when you go through coach training, basically, and what you're getting is coaching yourself.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and it was feeling safe enough in my relationships with my coaches to start exploring how I was feeling. So I guess then it was to roll back, it was starting to feel safe. That was the pin for me, was starting to feel safe so that I could then look within.
Yeah.
And
I,
so when I coach, or for me, the through line for me is safety and then being able to be curious.
yeah. I'm so glad that you were able to express that, because I think that's the missing link for so many people, that when they're in survival mode,
Yeah,
they can't feel safe enough to feel. And so
exactly.
they go back to whatever their coping mechanism is,
Mhm.
whether it be food, alcohol, sex, drugs, whatever. Like, and in many cases, for a lot of people, the really high level versions of that are thinking. I'm going to
Yes.
spend all this time in
Yeah.
my head. I'm going to think my way through this, and I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to make
Mhm.
spreadsheets and charts and and just justify everything.
Yes.
Um, there's there's certainly the option where you took that path to become a coach. What are some of the other ways that you recommend to people to get safe so that they can start to feel?
For me, becoming aware. So it's almost like becoming your own best friend is sort of the metaphor I use. So we tend to beat ourselves up and we say things to ourselves that we would never dream of saying to anyone else. You should be better at this. There's that angry voice that berates you. And I was able to um, start dialing that down by bringing in awareness and compassion. And I'm not naturally compassionate to myself. I can be very compassionate to other people, but as most of us can, right? We tend to give out stuff that we cannot give to ourselves. And so I had to create that sense of internal safety. And that meant I had to stop beating myself up. And that's really, really hard. It's probably the hardest thing I've done. It's a lot easier to stop, mentally, beating up on my kids for saying, you're not getting your room tidy or you're not getting an A in maths, right? That was there was sort of the low-hanging fruit, although I would still dive at those as well. But it was starting to not beat myself up. And then once I could create that, okay, I'm safe. I'm not in this sort of whirl of shame. I can breathe because I wasn't very good at breathing. And I just acknowledged to myself that this was really, really hard. And I was sad. I was really sad and really afraid.
So you had to start acknowledging your feelings, not just feeling them, but acknowledging
I had
what
to
they
name
were,
them. Yeah.
naming them. Yep.
Naming them, feeling them, voicing them. It's almost like a secret.
Yep.
It's like, oh my God, I think I'm afraid. It's almost like, but the relief on the other end,
Yep.
I'm really afraid. I don't know what to do. I love them so much.
Mm-hmm.
Those are kind of groundbreaking moments for me.
I'm torn between two different questions I want to ask. And I think I'm going to go this direction first. Why do you think so many parents are compelled to remove the obstacles from their children's paths?
Because we believe we have to.
Mm.
Because we believe that everyone else is doing it. And we believe that that's our job.
Yep.
To clear the path so that they will get an A or they will get a redo on the test, right? Or they will. So we're focusing on an outcome, and we've got to do everything we can to make sure that they are successful.
Mm-hmm.
And we've internalized this belief that that is what it is to be a good parent.
Yep.
And it's reinforced when you look around and everyone else, on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever, is all doing it. Stand in the line at the coffee shop after school drop off and, oh, my kid's just got on the travel soccer team. He's 5 years old. He's like, oh my God, we're not playing soccer.
What do you think are some of the consequences to that approach of parenting?
Well, I think what you end up finding is, you'll have a 27-year-old who has no idea what they want to do or who they are.
Yeah.
All right. Or they're in some successful career and realizing that they're not happy.
Yeah.
And in some cases, that's a good scenario, right? Sometimes they don't even realize that, and then they'll have their own family, and and the cycle is perpetuated. At the sort of the other end of the cycle, we're teaching our kids that we don't trust them,
Yeah.
that we don't believe that they can recover from a setback, that they're not capable. And I've really, really, I know from my kids and from my experience that what that teaches them is I don't trust them, and they end up anxious and depressed
Well,
and
and
lost.
that was actually what I was going to ask you next was, it, how is this approach, right? The helicopter parenting, if we want to kind of name it by societal standards, what is it doing to anxiety or contributing? How is it contributing to anxiety and depression in both parents and children?
In an enormous way.
Yeah.
I mean, just from my own experience, those are my clients. You feel like you're on a treadmill. You can't stop because everyone else is doing it. And the kids can't stop because this is the message that they get from their moms and their parents is, I need you to be successful. I don't need you to be you. I need you to be popular. I need you to be on the team. I need you to look good.
Yep.
And, no one's paying any attention to their inner lives. That's not important.
Mm.
Right? So the kid's not seen. They don't get a chance to develop their own sense of safety. It's all about performance.
For the parent that's hearing this and saying, okay, it's time, I got to break this cycle of fear-based parenting, what are some of the earliest steps they can take?
Take a breath.
Mm.
Take a breath. Feel your feelings.
Yeah.
Just acknowledge to yourself, this is really, really hard. As you said, it's the hardest job in the world. And there isn't anyone out there, who you don't get a medal. You don't get a performance review,
Yeah.
right? You don't get a pay raise. Um, take a long, hard look at yourself. It starts with you, right? What messages are you absorbing?
Mm.
What are you feeling?
Yeah.
Right? What if there's a different way?
Yeah.
Right? So sort of get off that treadmill of there's only one way. Let's narrow down the lane. You can only do it one way. If you stopped and took a breath, what else is out there?
And we often tell our children, think about the company you keep. But as parents, we have to think about that as well.
Yeah.
And where do we choose to get our information from? Where do
Mhm.
we choose to socialize? And what if we could step out and say, I'm not going to do this anymore? And it does create some challenges
Mhm.
societally. I can say from both experiences, being a parent who will not do my child's homework for them. I tell my children sometimes, you show up to school and say, I did not know how to do this.
Mhm.
I need additional help. That's the purpose of that homework. And if your teacher doesn't respect that, know that your mother does and your
Yeah.
father does, and that we will support you emotionally and mentally and physically in all these ways. But we're not doing you any favors by taking your experiences from you.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you're making me, what's coming up for me as you're saying that, right, is yes, hell yes to everything. And when you step in and do your kids' homework because you're ashamed
Yes.
that the homework didn't get done,
Yeah.
right? You're making it about you, not about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it starts with the parents.
And then from the other standpoint, having been the child of a parent who, flaws and all, that was one of her great qualities, is that she allowed me to fail early and fail often. And
Mhm.
I felt like even during that experience, realizing, oh, she trusts me.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
trusts me to make the decision, and she trusts me to write the course if I make the wrong decision. Um, and and I think that that's lost, because I think as perfect as I was, let's face it, right? I was ungrateful. And I never expressed that to her at those times. And it
Mhm.
only happened later on as I grew. And so, because we're not getting that feedback, we're not in a society where we expect instant gratification and instant feedback, and we're not getting that, we have to find that satisfaction elsewhere. We're not going to
Yeah.
get it from our children. So stop expecting it, but also know that just because you're not getting it doesn't mean that you're not doing the right thing.
Well, and maybe it's redefining what is satisfaction.
Yeah.
What are you getting?
Yeah.
You might not be getting, the kid who comes home with a gold star. Maybe you are.
Yeah.
But are you getting the kid who comes home and says, this was what my day was like?
Well, they'll communicate it because they're not expecting that the only benchmark is perfection.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's what has to be met.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are the key components of your coaching approach, and how do they help parents create a more authentic and fulfilling experience? And what I really mean by this question is, what are some of the components that make up your coaching experience?
Mhm.
And then how do how do you see that reflected through the process? Right? We're not looking for instant gratification, but where are some of those wins that you see occurring, not just for yourself, but also for the people you're working with?
Mhm. So, first off, um, I'd like to be, well, first off, what I want to do is create trust and safety.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's important, because without trust and safety, people aren't going to open up and be authentic. And I tend to, and I was told not to do this as a coach, but I tend to lead with my own screw ups.
Yeah.
Um, it's not the right way to do it, but I'm not perfect. So I like to say, this is me. This is me in all my screw ups and my kids in all their screw ups. And so, let's just talk about it. What is it like for you? What is it like out there? Um, and in doing that, we start to get to a place of safety and trust and connection. And when someone feels safe, as you pointed out, right, we're not no longer in fix, do, run, fight.
Mhm.
Um, Invite people to then think about what is there instead. If we weren't fighting and striving, what do
Mhm.
we want? So it kind of comes back to what you actually want for your kids and what do you want for yourself. So I always start first with the parent because, as you pointed out, it starts with you.
Yeah.
So having someone get safe and comfortable, and we can then start exploring values, what's actually important to you at
Mm.
the end of the day. What do you want? What's important?
That's lovely. How
Yeah.
long do you find that it takes typically in this coaching process to help somebody to get to that safety, um, and then eventually start to develop a real version of their values, not just the values that they believe they're supposed to have?
It varies. I mean, it really, really varies. I have some people who are just so done in that it's tears and crying, on day one. Other people, like kids, dip in and out, right? It's a learning process. So it's always pushing little edges. So, 6 months oftentimes. As I said, I screw up regularly. I
Yeah.
say the wrong thing all the time to my kids, and so the process isn't okay, boom, boom, you're done, right? It's about learning. It's always about learning, coming back, reflecting, going back out and learning.
Yeah. And I think that, like you're saying, that requires time. You have to have real life experiences. You have to experience another challenge, something that you've
Yeah,
never seen or expected in the past. And
yeah,
now all of a sudden it's right there and you're in the midst of it and you have to figure out how you're going to make your way through it.
yeah. Or come to the same old problem with different eyes.
Yeah. Mm,
Is it actually a problem? The messy room,
yeah.
right? Is
Yeah.
it actually a
Or is this
problem?
just perceived
Right?
as a
Yeah,
problem?
yeah. And that's
Mm,
where I come back to values, right? It's like, what do you actually want?
yeah. I love this vision of you becoming that safe space, that haven where a parent can go and be honest and learn what really matters to them. Because I imagine that there are times where it's the first time anybody's really asked them.
Yeah.
And what a gift that must be. Somebody who's listening to this and saying, I want to be around Louise Edwards. I want to orbit with you. I want to experience your calm energy, and your profound wisdom. How do they do that?
There should be a link in the information that you sent out to my website, which is new and I'm testing it. So this is part of my learning experience. So I would love feedback if anyone wants to take a look at Parent Coach Louise. No, see, I don't even know the name. I'm not perfect.
So that's a great point, right? That you're entrenched in the process of doing right now, and being and experiencing,
Yeah.
like so many of the people you're working with. And parentcoachlouise.com is
Thank
indeed
you.
the title for your website. But where are there other places? Do you show up on social media? Do you, and these might be choices that you've chosen not to do, right? Because they don't fit your values. But I
They
want
don't.
to,
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting.
Short
Okay.
answer. Yeah. Yeah. I follow one group, well, actually now two on Facebook, and one's called Shite Eventers because I'm into horses, and Connecticut Backyard Chickens, and I stay in that lane.
Horses and chickens.
Because yeah, I don't like social media. It's performative. It and how I've bumped up against it. I don't enjoy it. I will start writing regularly, and I'm going to be sending out newsletters. So I haven't quite decided on the platform yet.
Okay.
Um, but if anyone's out there and wants to be included, um, shoot me an email.
That's wonderful. And of course, they can email you from your website. Uh,
Mhm.
well, this has been a delightful conversation, and thank you for really walking us through very much the same process that you take your clients through, where you helped us to recognize the steps that we need to take in order to, develop safety and security for ourselves, and then be able to provide that for our family. And
Yeah.
this conversation was such a pleasure. Thank you, Louise.
Thanks, Isis.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Want to be our next featured speaker? Click the link in the description to register, and let's stay connected. Follow me on all those social media platforms for financial tips to help you make your money work smarter while you build financial stability. Stay tuned for more, and see you in the next one.